The reason we're going to talk about money today through the vehicle of love is because love is a vehicle that speaks to us. We have all been in love, whether it was requited or unrequited, and it sticks with us. It's very, very visceral. We don't just like to talk about love, though. We like to sing about love. Since Billboard started keeping track in 1890, there have been 3,348 chart-topping songs about love, with love in the title. To answer Kermit the Frog's question, there have been 42 songs about rainbows, and there have been exactly 0 songs about psychological bias in financial decision-making. And that is because we are loath to talk about how silly we are with money. We like to talk about money as an abstraction. What would you do if $1 million fell from the sky? And wouldn't it be cool to drive a Bugatti, right? But we don't like to look at our bank accounts, to the point that many banks are now taking the fund total off of the bottom right corner of online checking because they're finding that's the only way they really get people to look at their account, is if you can't see how much money you don't have. In the wake of the financial crisis, there was a lot of blame to go around, right? Was it Wall Street? Was it Main Street? Was it hedge fund managers? Was it everyday Americans? But I'm here today to settle the score once and for all, and we're going to tell you here at TEDx Huntsville just who has been to blame for all of this insanity. And it's you, and it's you, and it's you, and it's me. Because, friends, financial markets don't exist in nature. No one has ever picked a perfectly ripe credit default swap or unearthed just the right moist little hedge fund, right? We are the problem. We dream them up and then we screw them up. So we're going to talk about how we can do a little bit less of that today by talking about the common languages of love and finance and the behavioral biases that they share, and we're going to talk about 4 of them today. The first that we're going to talk about is, I won't ask for a poll here, but one I imagine many of you are familiar with, called the I can change them or fixer-upper bias, right? We watched a really compelling video earlier about the power of change, and indeed so much of what is good about humanity is rooted in a desire to make positive changes, to reach out our hand to people in need, or to help make the world a better place. But while this is a remarkably fantastic impulse to have in many arenas of your life, I would suggest to you that love and money are not the place to take this idea, right? But that doesn't stop us. And just like we try and date every fixer-upper within a 15-mile radius of Brigham Young University, say, for instance, a friend of mine, we also bring this decision-making to our financial lives. In fact, I want to talk about a recent study in which people were asked to buy lottery tickets. In the first scenario, they were given any old number, right? 1 through 50, and they were asked what they would pay if someone else chose the lottery ticket for them. 1 through 50, 2% chance of winning. Well, the people decided to pay $1.97. They thought that was the fair price for a lottery ticket that had been randomly assigned to them. But what about when they were given the choice to personally intervene and pick their lucky number? The odds remained the same, still 2%, still 1 in 50. But when people were allowed to try and change the process by picking their own number, they were willing to pay almost $9 for the lottery ticket. Why is it that we are 4 times more willing to pay for a random thing? We think we can control it. We think we could change it, just like we thought we could control our ex and we couldn't. The next tendency we have is to overinvest in things that we use every day, thinking that somehow, magically, our own enthusiasm for the brand and our own participation with that brand is going to buoy the stock price, right? Think about the Facebook IPO that recently happened and which has been one of the most calamitous ones in recent history. Well, Facebook told us all this was coming, right? Facebook told us that they had slowing growth. Facebook told us that people were shifting over to the less profitable mobile platform, and they told us that they had decreasing profit margins. Add to this that Facebook stock was trading at 400% of other sexy high-tech stocks like Google and Apple, and you get a really clear picture of what's going on. They told us, and we ignored them because we totally check our Facebook 5 times a day, right? Finally, the last piece of the I can change them bias is the belief that if we work for a company, they're headed big places, right? So I, as HR Generalist 3 at Coca-Cola Company, ought to invest in said company because I'm all that stands between Coke and financial ruin, right? I will single-handedly lift you up, Coke. You're welcome, right? These are all things we do. These are all things we do that are rooted in this common bias of I can change them. The second bias I want to talk about is called this time it's different bias. You can see Liz Taylor already, can't you, right? The this time it's different bias. We've all had the experience, right, of thinking that this time would be better. This time it's different. Liz Taylor had that experience 8 times with 7 guys, right? I'm not judging, I'm just saying, right? The statistic about U.S. divorces is a little bit misleading, right? We always hear that half of all marriages end in divorce. But actually, a decent bit less than half of first marriages end in divorce, but 67% of second marriages and over 70% of third marriages do end in divorce. When psychologists like myself look at this, what they find is that the tendency is for people to rebound into a new relationship without having adequately addressed the underlying problems that caused the first fracture, right? We believe that even if nothing about us changes, that this time is different and that this time is special. Psychologists call this new era thinking. And the first new era example of great new era thinking occurred in one of the biggest and most shocking financial bubbles on history, which occurred about 400 years ago in the Netherlands. At this time, a single commodity commanded 10 times the average salary of a Dutch worker. This same commodity was regularly traded for up to 12 acres of farmland and sometimes even single-family dwellings. And that commodity is a single tulip bulb. Another example of this is seen 300 years later in America in the mid-1920s. We see the economic prognosticators of the day saying that there is nothing to suggest that anything but prosperity would be the way of the world in the United States for the foreseeable future. Sure, calamities had happened in the past, but this time was different. This time was special. It's easy for us to think about this as an antiquated notion and something that our silly, dumb ancestors took part of. We would never trade our house for a tulip bulb. But we see these sorts of things at play even as recently as the last 4 years and even as recently as the tech bubble that occurred at the turn of the century. I want you to look here at the valuation of 2 toy stores, right? 2 toy stores, one a mainstay from back in the day, Toys R Us, and the other etoys.com, which was wrapped up in this new era thinking of the turn of the century, which said the internet was going to revolutionize everything, so much so that sort of the underlying financials were less important. Etoys.com had $30 million of annual sales, profits in the red, but a market capitalization or total stock value of $8 billion. Toys R Us, on the other hand, had $11.2 billion in sales, 9-figure profitability, and only 3/4 of the market cap. Okay? We get sucked into this and we think that this time is special and this time is different. But when I find myself entering into this trap of thinking that things are different this time, I like to jog my memory by reminding myself that we're only a couple hundred years removed from the notion that women's reproductive organs would atrophy if they got too much book learning.